In this video, I'm proving that the fire in the Lord of the Flies equals cleansing, salvation. I actually don't remember what they teach you it symbolizes in high school, but this is what I made of it. If you don't know already, this is a part of a playlist that I've made. I'm like basically proving biblical associations for the Lord of the Flies, like biblical symbols. And there's a playlist in the description box where the rest of the videos are. Because if I mention a symbol such as the beast, I'm probably not going to go into super great detail about why the beast is sin. Because I already have a video doing that. So, not a requirement to watch this video. But if you get curious about a symbol, you can. And hopefully my phone doesn't stop filming again. Because I've had to remake so many clips. Okay, so yeah, I feel like overall the fire kind of goes into the overall theme I feel like the book has of it being about war, not war being because we're sinful and animalistic deep down, and how getting rid of innovation, other things isn't going to help. So the first sign that the fire kind of gets rid of sinfulness is, or not the first sign, but the first thing that made me think this, maybe this could be true, is that on page 35, well, okay, so they make the fire when they first get there, right? And then it gets out of control, and the kid with the mulberry, or is it mulberry? Well, okay, so I also found some other proof in the process. The snakes symbolize evil, as I talked about in the last video, the video before this, in the playlist. And the snakes are getting destroyed in the fire. But then also, the little one with the mark on his face, he's the one that first talked about a beastie. He's the one that brought that up. And he's the main one they point out dying in the fire. It seems as if several other kids may have died, but there's specifically an emphasis on him. I mean, literally speaking, it's easy to remember that you can't find the kid with the huge mark on his face. But symbolically speaking, if this is an allegory and everything is a symbol, maybe the author is putting emphasis on that kid dying in the fire for a reason. Because the fire is wiping out evil. It's wiping out the snakes. And not to say the child is evil and should have died, but he's the one that was generating and perpetuating sin, so I guess he had to go. Also, it may seem like there's a hole in that because if the fire wiped out all the sin, then why was there still sin? It's because it didn't wipe out enough sin, right? They get saved once the fire burns almost the whole island, right? So yeah, that's really it. So not only did just the snakes evil get wiped out, not all of the snakes, right? But, or maybe, because I don't know if there were any vines after that, but not only did snakes get wiped out, but the fear of them got wiped out, which I talked about it in the last few videos. But the fear of sin kind of also drives them to be animalistic. And so it attempted to wipe out the fear, but obviously since the kid had mentioned it and Jack is on that island, it's still there. But because I think it went out. I don't know if they got control of it, or since they didn't intentionally go around setting tons of trees on fire, it went out. But it's not like it killed all of them, right? There's still people who remembered the beast being brought up there, so not completely gone. I'm talking a lot about how the fear of sin causes war, like the fear of Native Americans, indigenous people, really to any place, is used as an excuse to fight them. But that didn't just happen with indigenous people. I wrote down an example with the witch trials. Okay, so with the witch trials, yeah, people were dying, but they were so quick to blame it on sin, and it actually caused more people to die that didn't need to die. Literally, the seizures, because what happened was people were having seizures, and then others were blaming it on witches, and then that's when they started burning people. If they didn't just jump so quickly to it being because of sinful behavior, maybe they could have thought rationally and traced back what was making them sick or something, or at least people wouldn't have to die. Like, people would get the Black Plague and you didn't see someone being like, it's because of a sin, it's because of a witch. So, I don't know. I don't know if they just didn't have the ability to think about maybe this is an illness and not a curse, but that's another example where sin clouded, or fear of sin clouded judgment. Or I don't know if it's entirely fear of sin or hatred of women, because again, it's like it works better as an example of when the desire to enact violence um is masqueraded as this fear of sin. Didn't even need evidence. Yeah, like men could just be like, she's a witch, and they'd be like, oh, so true, and then just burn them. I mean, I'm sure like men died too, but it kind of seems like, I mean, I'm sure courts existed, right? It kind of seems like they just wanted to burn people in public. Another thing that's interesting, I won't say it's necessarily proof, but there's hidden religious phrasings throughout the book that most of them that I remember were pointed out by someone on YouTube. But something I noticed is that when Ralph and I would assume Jack, but it could have been Peggy, are wanting to start the fire, it says neither could confess that they didn't know how to start it. I feel like the author is very deliberate and there's so much hidden detail and everything. I mean, even just for it to be an allegory, even if it's a political reading, there's gonna be tons of hidden symbols and meanings. And just the effort the author put into describing the island makes me think that they're not lazy. So I wonder if they would go the extra mile to phrase things certain ways. I mean, for example, with Simon, sorry, I got a message and I went to start replying, but with Simon, when he's describing the soldier, thinks heroic and sick, that phrasing was obviously deliberate because the soldier was or the beast was actually a soldier, but Simon didn't know it was a soldier. So that's just an example of where deliberate phrasing has been used that I don't have to prove. I mean, it's pretty obvious what he was doing there. So I wonder if when he says stuff like confess, there's other examples, I just can't remember them off of the top of my head, but when he says confess, if he means to show that religious, or if he means to use such a religious word, and if he does, if it's not clear, what I was trying to say is, when do you confess when you're guilty about something, and why do they feel weird about not knowing how to start a fire? They probably feel a bit demasculated, literally. But although not a very strong, I guess, example of deliberate phrasing, it's still interesting. Symbolically speaking, if the fire is not literally a fire, it's a symbol for something else. I feel like it could make sense since the big ones are authority figures, I talk about that in my last video. I feel like it would make sense if politicians would be embarrassed to confess that they can't actually get rid of sin. Another thing that's interesting is that it wipes, and in the end, it wipes out most of the island, and it doesn't just, kill the kids who brought up the beast, or the snakes, or the pigs, or the Lord of the Flies. It also kills trees. I'd assume some grass was even on fire. It's a pretty deep removal or pretty widespread, and it's a pretty widespread removal. It doesn't just catch the vines on fire and then, or like catch a tree on fire and then everyone's fine. It's wiping out a lot, and it just reminds me of the flood in the Bible and how it was meant to, because I think it was like God had had enough. He was like, I'm tired of y'all. And it was meant to wipe out sin, to like start over. And it did just that. Like, it literally killed people. I think it was like Noah was left, and then he took 2 animals of every species. Don't know how he did that. But yeah, there was no, and I think he took some people actually, but people died. Lots of animals died. There's no remorse for things dying. Just like with the fire, it's getting rid of some people who, it's getting rid of these things that symbolize something deeper, such as the pig symbolizing temptation, the Lord of the Flies, and just the beasts in general symbolizing the sin in everyone. It's getting rid of those things, but it also doesn't care to kill people. That's why I'm comfortable guessing that if the fire is about cleansing, that's why the small child was wiped out. Not just by accident, but because it would be deliberate. Because in the flood, there was no remorse. It just wiped people out. We know the author has no problem killing children in books because he killed Piggy and he killed Simon. And, well, obviously, he also killed those small children. I feel like he would be comfortable killing, having the fire kill lots of things to symbolize a kind of biblical flooding of wiping out sin. Because think about it, the fire at the end, when it's caught most of the island on fire, that's when they get rescued. Not just when a few kids died. When the fire was when the island was completely like burnt down. To me, a widespread fire feels the same as a flood in the sense that it's wiping tons of people out. And in the biblical flood, it had a higher purpose, and I feel like the fire has a higher purpose. Another reason why the fire, I probably should have said this first, but another reason why the fire is symbolizing cleansing, me thinks, is because the fire brings rescue. It literally brings being saved. Also, what's really interesting is that the fire would keep going out. Like, when that soldier crashed on the island, he must have been flying over it, right? And if he was flying over it and it seems that he was shot down or something happened, well, if he was shot down, that's clear someone else was there. If something just happened, I wonder why he alone would just be flying over the island. At the least, if it's to scope out an area, that means that it's still on the military's radar, and they're just wondering if there's ships there in that area or something. And in every scenario, someone's aware of that area, and at least, I think it literally described a battle. It's just interesting because when the first ship comes by and passes, the fire was out. When the soldier, at least one soldier was overhead, the fire was out. Basically, every time, like someone was flying over, like every single time, I'm pretty sure, um, the fire went out. And every time the fire went out, it was when someone was flying over. Like, there was never an instance where the fire was out, but no one flew over, so it was fine, or no one was by, so it was fine, or someone flew over, but the fire was going and they just didn't see it. I don't think. It's interesting that the one time the fire actually burns enough of the island, that's when someone also happens to be going by and see the smoke. Because it's not like people were going by like 24/7. Like, what's
the odds that someone actually came by when the fire was going, you know?
It seems to me to be very deliberate that before, when the fire had killed some vines, but not the pigs, not the soldier with the parachute on, and it hadn't gotten all the symbols of sin inside people, not just the sinners, but the symbols of sin inside of people. Because even sinners can be saved, right? But when it hadn't gotten rid of the things that were really perpetuating the sin, they weren't saved. As if they couldn't be saved yet until they had gotten rid of specifically not just the vines, but the pigs, the Lord of the Flies, the soldier in the parachute, all of those bad symbols. And burn, the mountain, at least a majority of the land over the scar, completely cleanse it via fire. So that's like another big thing for me, another big proof is that the fire just conveniently goes out every time someone's in the area, but then as soon as most of the forest has been burned, it doesn't conveniently go out. Because even in the first part, it eventually goes out, and no ship had happened to see them or been in the area. Another thing that seems to suggest that the fire is holy in some sense is that they're really set on not taking the fire from the mountain until Piggy has the intellectual daring to suggest that they can and should take the fire from the mountain and move it to the civilized area. But when this authority figures that don't symbolize intelligence are talking about the fire, no one thinks to or wants the fire in that area. They treat it like it's bad to move the fire from that area, because as if that area needs it the most, as if the mountain needs it the most. Realistically speaking, the mountain is higher up, the smoke will get higher up. But symbolically speaking, what does a certain section of the island, I mean, because even when they're just taking some fire and moving it over, Ralph is upset about it. Like, why didn't he just say, if you're going to take fire, you need to add some sticks or something before you take your bit of fire? Oh, he doesn't want it to get out of control again, which realistically speaking makes sense. But symbolically speaking, what does not wanting the fire in the beach area symbolize? Seems to suggest that it's only good to have it in the mountain area, and if everything over the scar, since the scar symbolizes human infestation due to the plane making that scar, if everything over the scar is just bad area, nothing good happens over there. I talked about it earlier, but nothing good happens over the scar. So why is the fire kept in that area? Well, if it's just holy, then you'd think you'd want it in the civilized area where better things happen. But if it makes things better in of itself and it's cleansing, then of course you'd want it in the bad area, and you wouldn't want less of it in the bad area. And of course, if the book symbolizes violence is sinful and bad, then of course it's intellectual to suggest bringing fire and cleansing to the ordered area. Because politicians don't believe that colonized and civilized areas need salvation, but the author does. That hence why it's intellectually daring to move the fire there. And just the fact that Jack's character is anti-fire in a sense seems to suggest that the fire symbolizes something good, because Jack is a negative figure. We can all agree on that. I have a whole video.
No, I don't. No, I don't, because I lost it. So yeah, don't look for it because it's not there. Although in my last video, which it was like it involved proving the symbols that are involved in proving that Jack, oh my gosh, is not a dictator. Um so yeah, I kind of just like explained how everything related, about to have my hereditary moment. I kind of explained how that related to Jack in the video via me editing, hence how I picked up this habit of coming on here every 5 minutes and babbling. So, if you're still intrigued by Jack not being a dictator, then you should watch it.
But they talk. Jack isn't like specifically like I hate fire. You know, he needs it to make the pig better and more palatable. But he doesn't care about it when it's not making things more palatable and better. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't care about using it for rescue.
I feel like I probably explained this in the Jack video that is somewhere out in the universe since information can't be destroyed. So basically, like what I'm saying by that is that like okay, so when Jack like cooks pig, sometimes it's like not necessarily to cook it. Like in the first instance where he cooks pig, I'm about to yawn. Okay. In the first instance where he cooks pig, it's still raw meat. Like it says in some way that's raw, but for some reason after it's on the fire for like 2 seconds, they're like, it's good to go. I mean, literally, they probably were like, yeah, we should cook this, and then they were starving, so they just ate it anyways. But figuratively speaking, I mean, like, why did it need to go on the fire first? Like, why didn't the author just like cut that out since that would kind of be unnecessary to show and just have them like go straight to eating it? Because the fire makes the pig more palatable.
He cares about using it for his sinful behavior. And so, if Jack doesn't care about it, obviously Jack wouldn't care about something good. His symbol is like a whole stereotype of bad. So, I wrote down the page with the ejected pilot. So, let's go see it. Also interesting that while the fire is out, another negative symbol and figure enters the island. Yeah, there's a sudden bright explosion. Yeah, there was a battle fought at 10 miles 8. So there's a battle being fought near. Like, people were near, and the fire was conveniently out. It wasn't just one soldier. People would have literally found them if there was a fire going. I mean, maybe they wouldn't have been able to swoop down and save them mid war, but maybe they could have radioed about it. So definitely fishy that the fire was conveniently out. I mean, I'm not saying like a character did it on purpose. I'm just saying that seems to prove that they weren't ready to be rescued for whatever reason. I mean, technically the author could have added tons of action and then had them be rescued at that point. But my theory is that they weren't ready to be rescued because the fire hadn't done enough burning yet. I also wonder in the end when the boat comes to save them, I wonder if the war was over yet. Because it would also be interesting if the fire was conveniently out when the ships and pilots would be there because it can't burn in the presence of war. Because it's salvation and positivity and it can't survive near that. The ending of the book would kind of contradict that, but it is interesting to think about if the first ship that came by was off to battle or something, and then the last ship was returning home from battle. The beast, who's not really a beast, squats by the fire, and I think Ralph says it's as if it doesn't want them to be rescued. Yeah, the beast is literally stopping them from making fire. The beast is stopping them from being saved. Sin is stopping them from making fire. What would sin stop you from doing? being cleansed and saved and holy. So, and then I also mentioned this earlier, but they would be eating raw pig. Yeah, people would eat raw pig at least once, but I believe people had already been eating, and then Ralph finally had enough and started eating it. But they still put it over the fire anyways, and they could probably still see that it was bloody. It would be interesting to see exactly how many times that happens. Like, is it just once? Oh, on a page, Jack says what a place for fort when they're exploring. Fort, as in where they set up war, maybe? Since this suggests that Jack, who's a sinful figure, is also associated with war. And therefore, the author sees war negatively. Okay, yeah, I don't know. But since everything is a symbol, even the first time, although not the most concrete proof, seems to suggest that because there's a reason they didn't just eat it raw directly. Seems to suggest that even putting it over the fire at all made it better. And obviously, when they're cooking pig, it does make it better and more able to eat. Also, cooking pig gets rid of the blood, which symbolizes dirtiness, guilt, that sort of thing, which I think I already talked about blood. Or no, I haven't, but I will in the next video. So yeah, this video should be shorter, hopefully. And then there's 2 more videos after this, and then it'll finally be done. I'll probably actually start upload. I'll probably actually upload these once a week or maybe twice a week, just because of how long it's going to take me to edit. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it up every other day because I want to get it up as soon as possible. So if it's not in the playlist yet, that's why. Watch the other videos if you wanna. If not, I hope you were convinced that you could read this with different connotation than just the political. If you weren't, great.